lot, Daniel. Thanks
Yeah.
for hanging, baby.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas curious fans, and welcome to another episode of Third Degree, the podcast. Once again, I'm not Peter Welpton. He is currently having some technical issues and may be joining us a little later on, but I am your resident Englishman, Dan Crook, instead. And, of course, with us always is the wonderful founder and editor of Third Degree, Buzz Carrick.
Hello, Dan. Today I'm not calling in from San Diego, California with the rest of the FC Dallas team where they're preparing to play a couple of scrimmages, unfortunately.
How dare you? Well, where are you calling him from?
I'm actually, of all times, I'm actually calling in from my house, as much as I'm not happy about that. But this year it just didn't work out with schedule between the amount of work I have and how it lined up with when FC Dallas was going to be places for long enough times to make it worthwhile. There's not any alignment where I could get somewhere for a good stint. Just going, like, paying for a trip to Cali for like 2 days just doesn't make sense. So, maybe next year it'll line up better, and maybe there'll be a day where through enough support or enough advertising or whatever, I can actually do this for full-time living, and then I'll be able to do all the trips. But right now, not the case. So here we are anyway. We'll watch it remotely and we'll read all about it and we'll move on.
Well, you were still a roving reporter, having flown back into town today at least.
Yeah, I flew in from Kansas City. I was up in Kansas doing some college basketball.
Where you mentioned that you saw the novel idea of team advertising.
Oh yeah, that's true. At the kiosk at the flight kiosk at the Kansas City airport, MCI, Sporting Kansas City it was one of the rotating 3 billboards next to the flights with an ad for their season. Them and the Chiefs, and I can't remember what the third one was. It wasn't a sporting team. So it's just nice to see a team doing some marketing, doing some outreach, doing some adverts in their market, particularly where people are coming in and out and might see it. So it's some people do things to get their team's name and word out in a probably a affordable but yet far-reaching fashion.
Definitely, it's always good to see that, and hopefully we'll see a lot more of that around the FW at some point, and some bigger crowds someday. But yeah, moving on to the here and now, we've had a pretty busy week between us heading out to Frisco. I know Lucci made a joke about seeing me quite a lot lately, and you're his lunch buddy, so
yeah,
he sees you a lot.
I saw him on Monday, and there's been a couple of casualties in the media market, so he may be seeing a lot of you and I as the season goes on. He may get tired of us, but in the meantime, we can report on the team and help out, and hopefully people will enjoy what the coverage we bring them. There was a bunch of news today for sure that we can talk about, and we will talk about.
Absolutely, but I guess let's start with chronologically, and I was able to go out to the intra-squad scrimmage on Saturday. You made practice on Monday. We both got a pretty good look at the draft picks and who's coming along. We both also got to see a little bit different. A few guys out with injuries, a few precautions, a few walking wounded. So I guess what did what kind of stuck out on Monday from what you happened to see at practice?
Well, Monday the big questions were Fafa Pico and Michael Barrios, who both were held out with some little soreness in the knee area, lower thigh, upper calf, knee-ish area. Lucci assured me at the time there wasn't any concerns, that it was just high workload at the beginning of the season. They were going to have scans. And I know both those guys played on Wednesday, so I'm sure they're fine. One interesting thing I saw on Monday was the usage of some 3-5-2 in training, and I know that was replicated again on Wednesday. I do know that Lucci is not planning on having that be their core formation, but they do want to work on it a little bit here and there because they want to be able to go to it on the fly or go to it in certain games if they feel it's the right matchup. They're just trying to add arrows into the quiver, add tactical stuff. So that's why you're seeing a little 3-5-2, because it's a little bit raw for them. They haven't done it a lot. So I'm sure that carried over to Wednesday. It definitely, in terms of the build, there definitely are some guys who don't know what they're doing yet in that formation. But when they have all their healthy pieces, I'm sure they'd be able to play out of it perfectly adequately.
Definitely. They did use the 3-5-2 on Wednesday. It was kind of a bit of a mess. We got that. Well, actually, I didn't even get the email. You told me on Tuesday that the scrimmage was going to be closed. So I asked the PR team, and they were like, "Yeah, the technical staff wanted to close it." I asked Lucci. I was like, obviously one of the biggest things, whether we report on it or not, is having the insight of being around the team and around the coach and staff, building those relationships. So, I happened to be off work that morning, so I went up to the stadium, caught the end of practice after I got done with something. And I said to Alicia, like, hey, I just want to, I know, like, you've closed the train and the scrimmage later on. And he stopped me and goes, what? Have we? So it turned out there was a mix-up. He was asked if he wanted to have a stream for Wednesday, for yesterday, and he declined it. And, I totally support the reason, both as a fan and a member of the media, in that they wanted to try this 3-5-2, and there's so much that goes into 3-5-2. You can just say the formation; it doesn't really mean anything. The build-up play, how the midfield the middle three line up in the midfield, what the second striker does, how far the wing backs go up ahead, and simply he didn't want that on video for other teams to scout out. He wanted to have the option of, if he uses it in the season, it's a surprise, which. Totally understandable, but they kind of, mistook that as, let's close it off from everyone.
That is perfectly understandable, because there is some fluidity to the way FC Dallas plays the 3-5-2. You've seen how in their 4-3-3, the way they build, those outside backs come up and the defense spreads and the 6 drops in. Those variations, those fluid movements, they happen in the 3-5-2. So there's a lot of fluidity between, as they build, where it's like for 1 second it's a 3-5-2, the next second it's a 3-4-3, the next second it's like the center back stepping into the middle, and now it's a 2-3-5. It's like there's the way Lucci plays and the way his teams are structured. They're constantly in flux and they're constantly in dynamic, particularly as they go forward and go back. That transition is a key hallmark of Major League Soccer. And as a matter of fact, one of the reasons why athleticism is so important in this league is because you have to be able to respond quickly and transition from offense to defense, on the drop of a dime. And that's a component of Lucci ball, and that's true in both a 3-5-2 and in a 4-3-3. So it's not surprising Lucci didn't want that on tape, but it was nice that in the end you were able to watch and get some notes and actually write something about it today, and get some good stuff up on the site. Did you have any insight from some of the players you watched that might be obscure? One thing I will throw in energy-wise is Brian Reynolds was held out with some tightness in his quad, so that's one reason why he didn't play.
Okay, yeah, because I sort of asked about a couple of players that I didn't think to ask about Reynolds at the time. There were definitely a few things, and writing about it earlier was kind of difficult because there was... It was trying to describe how someone performs, but leaving out the tactical shifts and how they responded to it.
Right.
Kind of a bit difficult when you've got, collapsing from one formation to another and breaking out and building out directional play and everything else. But, that I was really impressed with actually Nkosi Burgess. He looked a bit rough in his first week. Not the greatest passer. Definitely more of a physical than a mental aspect to him. Case in point being in the intra-squad scrimmage, he comes way out of position. From centre back, he's hugging the touchline up at the halfway line to take on Santi Mosquera. Mosquera sees him kind of shaping up. He doesn't, kind of like when you're defending, if you've got a player running at you, you kind of want to be shoulder onto him. so that you can do the quick turn and chase if they knock it past you, but at the same time you can flick a foot out, steal the ball away. Burgess goes completely square to him, flat-footed. Mosquera just knocks it around him and runs through. Burgess is apparently quicker than Mosquera, catches up to him, and Mosquera's not slow. He outpaced him. Mosquera just about knocked the ball in, but under such pressure that it was kind of a useless cross. And I think I'd highlighted in the write-up that kind of typified what I'd seen from him. That he's not so much the technique as he is the athleticism. And I sent you some audio actually where I kind of asked Lucci about it for the Patreon. I don't know if you used it or not. Talking about the differences between coaching an athletic player versus a more methodical player whose feet haven't quite caught up with the brain. Bit of an it was an interesting discussion, probably something that's not worth getting too deep into, but I definitely saw a different side of him. I saw a player whose passing was better. He was picking out easier, logical passes, and that maybe because in 3-5-2 you suddenly have a couple of extra outlets with an extra centre back and not having like a true 10, having more of like a midfield core. Going into his tackles, he was picking his moments better again. Maybe that's the luxury of having extra cover. But definitely night and day from what I've seen from him so far. Callum Montgomery as well, his passing was fantastic.
Yeah, Callum's been working on his passing in training, doing extra work at the end of it, particularly long passing, or long outlet passing.
Definitely. And that definitely showed. That was kind of what stuck out to me most of all from the first game. Mosquera grabbed a quick goal. I actually didn't get to see that because they started the scrimmage 15 minutes early. I got there just before. Yeah, I got there just before Cobra bundled in a goal. Typical Cobra crashes in, runs through 10 people, and toe pokes over the line. Montgomery forced in the second half of the game. Montgomery forced an own goal just from him attacking a corner. Kind of what you used to see from Walker Zimmerman in the first team, how he'd go after the ball. There were a lot of encouraging signs. Didn't really like the formation too much. There were a few defensive frailties there. Maybe not enough attacking benefit for it. Without trying to go too deep. How did you kind of get a feel from it in practice?
Well, in practice, when I saw it, they were only working on the build-out phase of it, which is exactly like the start of the season last year, where they started with the basics, which is here's the basic formational build-out stuff. So their use of the 3-5-2 right now is basically where they were day one a year ago with the 4-3-3. So it's it was only about 70% speed when I was watching. It wasn't real play. It was just like here's the mechanics of the rotation. So there was nothing to judge from it other than like the fluidity of it and like how it shifts as it goes forward. Those were interesting to watch. When I was watching it, they even were doing it where they had more men than the opposition did in order to make it positive and building and going forward. And because the exercise wasn't about breaking anyone down, the exercise is about the mechanics of the practice of repetitive. This is how the build works. It's the early, riding the bike stages of using that formation. So I would not read anything into the use of it at this stage. It's way too early to really say. So we'll need to see them use it in a whole game with their full team against another really good team, really decide if it's any good or not.
Definitely. And that was kind of it. Like, talking about the build out from a back three of Hedges, Burgess, and Callum Montgomery is not going to relate to what you'd see in MLS. You'd see Ziegler. Yeah. You'd probably see you'd probably see a fullback drop in, rather than make a sub on the spot, but you'd always have the likelihood of Bresson who.
You're talking about Montgomery, who's yet to make his MLS debut, and Burgess, who probably will not make an MLS debut until deep into this season, if at all. So that's not.
He's got to get a contract first.
Yeah, right. That too. Well, I'm fully confident Burgess will get a contract with us.
I definitely join you in that. But Ziegler and Bresson both had a little sore hip flexor, nothing major. They were just held out as a precaution. You mentioned Barrios in the practice. In this Saturday scrimmage, the intra squad, he kind of tweaked his knee funny. He had a little soreness in his MCL, and he was just feeling it a little bit. So he walked out of the game. So I think that would have been 2 days later. He's probably still a little sore. They're probably still just checking it out. But he played the first half yesterday. Looked like Michael Barrios, attacking players. He had Atiba Harris marking him, so they were hugging it out quite a bit and talking.
I bet they were.
But yeah, he looked like he always does. No real effects from that. I know when Lucci said MCL, I was like, oh god, but nothing major there.
Sometimes you get a little tightness in that area at the start of spring training just because you don't kick a ball a lot over the winter, and all of a sudden you come in and you kick in the first week, you kick 1,000 balls, and all of a sudden your MCL on the inside's a little sore. It's only if you come back with a scan that says there's some kind of degeneration there that you worry. It's just a little.
It's also bloody freezing in Frisco. I mean, last night the wind chill was like 34. Fafa Pico played, and his knee was taped up with an insane amount of KT tape. I would absolutely buy shares in that if on the basis of how much was used on his leg. But again, it was cold. You've got to account for, can his knee stay loose? Do you need to give it some extra support?
And if they were at all worried about it, they would not have let those guys run out on a Wednesday night against Oklahoma City.
Oh, exactly.
Can you do it in a cold night and a cold week night in Frisco?
Yeah, which is why Bresson and Reta Ziegler sat out because and Brian Reynolds, because it's why make it worse? Why
second week of spring?
It?
It's playing against the USLC team that's just starting. It's like it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And then we saw a little bit more later on in the scrimmage. We had the North Texas SC scrimmage. Not North Texas SC, North Texas Rayados.
Right.
Playing against a lot of youth players and some of the draft picks. Derek Wardock. He was actually the third centre back in the first game, which was kind of interesting because he's a left footer. He played on the left side of that, but he's a defensive midfielder who can also play fullback. So it was kind of interesting to see him trying to sort of work components of both positions there. Yeah. Then he went back to midfield and he looked just fine. He's as we mentioned last week, as we both said everywhere, very intelligent player. The physical side probably has to catch up with the mental side. Would be a great project, but the guy's pretty close to a biology degree from Stanford, so
right. Yeah.
Can North Texas SC pay as much as an employer for that?
I mean, that'll be the question with him, is because he's not an MLS level player at this point in time. If you can get him into North Texas SC and you can progress his technical skills and you can rein in his instincts, because he's very aggressive and he tends to go forward when you might not want him to as a 6. You want that 6 to stay in the right position. You don't want all that Acosta-ness coming out when you're talking about, a late round draft pick, not a guy that's played in the World Cup. So, there's some stuff that you could build on there. There's stuff that would be serviceable for USL.
Is Acosta-ness just blowing a shot over the Hall of Fame from 30 yards?
I meant more of his want to float forward on these runs underneath the strikers more than I did the actual shots. In training, Luci's always like, well, Derek, he calls him Derek, back here, 6. You're a 6. I mean, there's something there, But as like we've both talked about, it's that Stanford finished that education. He should have one semester left, unless he's been clowning around. That's going to be a tough ask. I think there's a chance maybe he'll show up in the summer. Why not give it a
Yeah.
go for a season or something and see how it goes? But if he thinks he's med school bound, then he might pull a Jon Snow and just take off.
Trying to get the reference there, but
Oh, that's a guy who it's a former U.S. soccer player. There's actually some articles around floating around.
Oh, I thought you
where at
meant
one
Jon
point in time-
Snow from Game of
No,
Thrones.
no. I believe I have the right name. Maybe I'm Game of Thrones is his name. I think it's Jon Snow, and he was just about the best striker in U.S. history at that time. Not U.S. history, in the U.S. at that time. He was a college player. He was of the era of Winalda and those guys. Maybe a touch before that, before there was a pro league, and there wasn't really anywhere for him to play. And he was a bit of a head case. And instead of playing with the national team, he kind of just went off and did his own way and did his own thing. And so it's just that made me think of it, a guy that just turned down the pro game and went to school or whatever he was doing. It just popped into my head. It's probably a really old soccer reference that most people are not going to know.
Interesting.
It might be Ken Snow. Maybe that's his name. We'll look it up. Go ahead, keep going, Dan.
Yeah. So what was I actually going to say? He's obviously a project, and I sort of asked Lucci yesterday. Those decisions are looming, right? Because we kind of expected to see a couple of guys cut at this point. Obviously, some injuries, some tightness, whatever you want to call it, has left FC Dallas with a smaller number than they wanted. Not necessarily allowing them to. So I sort of asked, are those decisions looming? Who goes with the first team? Who goes with the development side? And who just goes? And he's pretty blunt about it and saying, a project's one thing, but they need to see a project that has a development plan to impact the first team sooner rather than later.
Right.
Which means, kind of what we've seen with some guys getting cut from North Texas SC. They're not just going to sit them around because they benefit North Texas SC. They're going to keep them around because, like an Arturo, they have the potential to benefit FC Dallas more than they have to benefit NTSC in the long run.
And that's the downside of the 4-year college career is by the time you come out of college at roughly 22, the window on you is very small. It's a season or two at best these days. Is FC Dallas going to keep around on North Texas a guy who's 23, 24 when they've got a kid who's 18 that they can bring in and play instead? It's actually arguably better. I mean, that was one of the things that struck me the most when I was watching practice on Monday, trying to watch Derek Waldack and think, oh, is he a player that can help Lucci, because I was trying to think in his mindset. And I was watching him play next to Evan Cerrillo, and Evan Cerrillo is twice the player, and he's 18, and he's not 22. It's just that's why it's so difficult now that the draft has any impact at all. It's so hard for those guys to make it.
The problem you get as well is, like they're physically fully developed. The brain, this is something I got from Lucci. The brain is ever developing, but the kind of like the main development stops around 24. So you've got, like you say, a year or two to really
exactly
instill all that the football IQ in a player. Whereas someone like a Cerrillo, you're like, hey, 6 years down the line, he's going to be an MLS vet. He doesn't have to be a world beater, but he's going to know their system inside and out and know what to do.
Well, that's why most developmental systems end at the U23 team. There's not much past that. I mean, some teams will have a reserve team, but that's just about keeping guys fit. That's not about development.
Honestly, even that now is turning into under 21, under 23, plus whoever needs it.
Right. Maybe a guy or two. But by the way, it is Ken Snow, and I was correct. He won the Herman Trophy twice in 88 and 90. That's what I was thinking of. Sorry, backtracking on my reference. But that you can use that same discussion when you want to talk about Ferriol, if I'm saying his name out, Manuel Ferriol, who is a better player than athlete. And you look at how good a player he is. He's the player that is most able to, most trainings I've seen anyway, step in and compete at the highest level with these MLS guys and with the North Texas guys, but there's a little bit of athleticism missing. And when you watch him play, you think, can he handle the MLS, the transition in MLS, the pace in MLS, the up and down in MLS, when he's a split second behind in his reactions on all these drills, and a split second behind in his turns, and a split second behind. He's a great player, but you watch him and you think, how much can I develop that? Can I make that into an MLS player? Now, maybe you could think, maybe FC Dallas will think, can I make that into a USLC player? Could I develop him and sell him? So, there may be a spot for him if he's interested. I definitely think there is a spot for him. I don't think it's with FC Dallas, but, there's a lot to consider when you're talking about guys that are coming out of college. It's not the same as it was back in the day.
So he's the one I'm sitting on the fence most about, because he looked great on Saturday. He, up until yesterday, I would say has been the most complete draft pick. Who looked, positionally not the most likely, because centre mid's pretty. Any of those centre mid positions is kind of tough to get ahead of some of the options, but
right, just
in terms of being a complete player, he kind of looked like he was head and shoulders above all the other draft picks. Yesterday, that's a big chance to impress. If those cuts were coming before San Diego, that was the last chance. It was the only chance against external opposition. And he looked like he... In the second scrimmage, he played the second half of the first one and then the second one as well. If you saw him going up against the North Texas Rayados midfielder and you just watched a one-on-one, you wouldn't know which player was playing for which team. He didn't stand out against NTPSA players, which was, that should have been the great equalizer for him in not having someone with MLS or USLC physicality. I don't know where he falls at this point, and he's an international, and MLS has international rules, and USL has international rules. It's he's possibly at the same time one of the best and worst prospects there, which is peculiar.
Yeah, he like I say, he's an odd one where the level of play outdoes the athleticism. You look at the touch, you look at the passing, it's all good. You look at his movement on the field, he's making the right runs, he reads the game well. It's just sometimes when you watch him play against MLS level players, the burst isn't quite there, the turn timing isn't quite there, the split second movements are just a shade behind. There have been players that have been bad athletes that are great players that have made it before, but MLS is not that kind of league.
No,
that's a difficult ask. That's a lot easier in the USL. I think that's a player that you could develop and do something with. I think he'd be great in USL 1. I think he could probably be pretty good in USL C, but I don't think there's enough there for me for MLS, but you never know. I mean, he's at least a good enough player that can keep up. So it's like if he's willing to do it, and you got a spot in North Texas that needs an 8, then great. But let's try it. But if you're talking about is he going to get to MLS? I mean, he's already behind all the 1,800 MLS 8s that FC Dallas has, and then you got to include Arturo, you got to include David Rodriguez. I mean, you can take playing time away from him. And they just signed Gibran Rayo, who's a guy who can play an 8. He's probably not an 8, but he could do it. Mm-hmm. And Emmanuel Almaguer is an 8. I mean, it's like Tanner Tessman is an 8. Are you going to really play that guy over all those kids? I don't know, man. That's tough. I'm with you. That's a borderline. Yeah. That's a coin flip.
And I don't think it helped that he was just that bad yesterday. I mean,
yeah.
There is always the possibility that. It was cold weather, hard to get going.
Yeah.
Going from one system to another, playing two different sets of opposition. There's a lot of factors to it, but it was just it was a bit rough to see. On the other hand, you had Derek. I always forget his name. Waldeck. He did kind of cope with that. Anders Engebretsen, that was actually the most I saw of him. I saw him on the scrimmage on Saturday. He was kind of more as a centre mid. When he's a winger, he was lost. He was nowhere to be found. Yesterday, put him back out on the wing. He looked pretty good. He had a couple of smart plays. He got an assist on one of the Cal Jennings goals. It's the best I've seen out of him, but I don't see MLS. I'm not sure I see pro. Period.
Yeah, I don't see enough there too. And remember, he's an international also.
Yeah.
For me, I mostly thought he was absolutely terrible. Up for like 2 seconds, he did something good on a wing spot as well. And I've learned that 4 of the picks traveled and 1 did not. And I'm 99% sure that it's Ingerston is the one who did not go and was done because he just didn't bring enough to the table and didn't have any moments where I thought, well, there's a little something. It just wasn't there. It's just, I can think of 4 or 5 draft picks over the last 2 years that were better that didn't make it. So for me, that's got to be the guy. And and even Farrell and Waldeck are borderlines. I think I would give them both the deals if they wanted them, but I wouldn't break the bank for it by any means. But I think Ingerson's out for me. I'm sure he's the guy that didn't go.
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of goes back to what Lucci said yesterday, and I've actually got it in front of me. We're not just going to sign a player to the second team that we just think can help the second team without first team projection. He doesn't have first team projection. No. There's no chance. I'm not. Yeah, I don't know if he could have a projection for USL Championship even. Best bet really is to explore other options, whether that's in Norway or still in the US.
Right, I agree.
But one high note, Cal Jennings looked great. Your boy,
my boy, yeah. Line form's here.
Yeah, he's gonna be. He's definitely. Well, Daniel Robertson put it best on Twitter earlier. He said something about he's got a lot of the things that develop a cult following.
Yes,
he's very confident in himself. From day one, he's been talking about how he can help FC Dallas. There's been no doubt in his mind. Now with the small number of strikers FC Dallas has, he's got every right to kind of talk as if he's already got a contract.
Yeah, from the first day I saw him, he was the one that was the most at ease in training. Body language, countenance, how he carried himself. He's got the body strength to hold off a 6'4" defender. He's got the pace to run by people. He's got the ball skill to break guys down. He is a great in-the-box goal poacher. He does need to work on his wide play. He will need to develop a wing game in order to be versatile enough for Lucci. Lucci likes versatile players. But I fully expect that guy to make it. And matter of fact, early in the season, if Cobra gets some call-ups, if Pepe gets some call-ups, you might be looking at a team where he's your only striker left.
Yeah.
You might. Yeah. I mean, more than likely, of course, they're going to put Barrios at striker in that situation, or Jesus Ferreira as a striker, but Jesus could be called up too. You could easily see a situation where Cal's your number one guy off the bench for some games early on. So despite the fact he'll probably get some North Texas time, of course, while he learns the system, it's very likely that he's the guy, the rookie most likely to be in the 18, the most likely to make his debut within the first month or 2 of the season even.
Yeah. I mean, I like his game. It's not just he is a very physical, very fast player. And Lucci's been pretty keen to sort of, say to him, you need to develop the other sides of your game as well. You need to be an intelligent player. You don't want to just be a player that gets caught offside or has to rely on being bigger and stronger, because he's a skinny guy, but he's a strong guy. Plays off the shoulder really nicely. He's definitely getting that side of his game, kind of coming out wide, little checking passes, hold up players is fantastic. It's something that you wanted from Maxi Urruti a couple of years ago, and he took that as, I'll be a defensive midfielder. Okay.
That's true.
But he gets in the box. He will, if you see him play, he'll definitely give the linesman cramp in his arm with the amount of offsides he's given.
Yeah.
I really like I like the defensive side to his game. On Saturday, the only goal was scored by Santi, and it was if there was an assist that you could give, it would have been to Cal Jennings. It kind of played out as Montgomery's got the ball on the byline. He's looking for a left back option. Cal curves his run round to cut off the left back option. Cuts into Montgomery. Montgomery's forced to play back to Jimmy Mauer. Ball's a little bit ahead of where he expected. He tries to reach for it, takes a nasty touch, and then Mascara runs to sort of cover Jennings' spot and just taps into an empty net. It couldn't have been much more of this goal was scored by this player, but this goal was, completely created by the other.
You have to like that Cal Jennings can press already. What he'll have to work on is not over-pressing. He'll have to work on his team concept and team timing because you don't want him to wear himself out. But he definitely can press already.
That is one thing. And, you go to practice and you'll hear Lucci shout it. You'll just hear Jennings timing.
Yeah,
pick your runs.
That's exactly right.
But that side of his game's really nice. He's a very aggressive player. Definitely throwing himself about a lot. It's nice to see. I mean, the other goal he scored. He's on the floor in freezing cold, hard ground. He's on the floor trying to reach that ball and turns it in. He could add 5 on the night. Really, it was against NTPSA opposition. Obviously, a very good team for NTPSA. We've seen them beat North Texas Rayado. They are North Texas Rayados. We've seen them beat OKC Energy. We've seen them beat FC Wichita and Fort Worth Vaqueros. They could definitely compete at a higher level. But let's not get carried away. He's still the prospect.
Still a prospect, but just the furthest ahead of and the most likely to have an impact of any of the picks that they've made. And let's remind everybody that he's the payoff of the Pedroso trade, that pick that they used to get him. So there's a little payoff for Pedroso trade for you.
Yeah, it's not a bad way of looking at it at all.
Right.
That's Pedroso, who's not even in the league anymore.
Oh, was he out? I hadn't noticed that.
They waived him at the end of the season. He only played like half of the games he was there for.
I hadn't seen that.
It was what we saw here. That first half of the season, I would argue he was probably the best fullback in MLS, or at least the best left back in MLS. And then his first full season, he kind of tailed off, and
maybe he decided he was good.
Maybe, who knows?
That happens.
Who knows? Speaking of players who are no longer in the league. We saw some things about Dante Seeley potentially going to PSV Eindhoven.
Yeah, as near as I can tell from the translation of that tweet, he's actually already there. I don't know if that's true or not, but the tweet said that he was an internship, which I take to mean as a
he'll be an apprentice,
if you will. Now you can join an academy like that without signing a contract. We don't know that he's joined their academy. He does have a TNT passport, which allows him a lot of freedom. But on Monday, literally, I asked because I hadn't seen Dante on Monday, and it was the second time I hadn't seen him. He was around all week training. They just weren't, because he's 16. They're not having him do 2-a-days, so that's why I had missed him. Excuse me. But Lucci said that there was still, as he put it, opportunities inside the club, meaning North Texas or FC Dallas. But he said there's also going to be an opportunity for him outside the club, and so I took that to mean, and now we know, sort of like the Byron kind of thing, like a training stint, where, so if in fact he is going to PSV, I'm sure that the idea is that they'll take him on loan, or they might want to buy him, or something like that, or they're running the rule over him, as they used to say. So I did actually ask officially. I asked FC Dallas to comment because of this report that we saw today. And their official answer is, quote, no comment, unquote. So, that tells you something, that they didn't instantly just say, no, he's part of the team. I mean, so I think we're probably fair to speculate that because Dante does have a TNT passport, he can get over to Europe before he's 18. And he has gone to several other clubs before. So I find it perfectly valid that he's actually over there on this short-term stint with the idea that maybe they're actually going to loan him or buy him. And essentially, we're just going to have to say at this point, stay tuned, because until we get something from FC Dallas or from PSV or from Dante's, well, he shut down his Twitter, something like that, we're just going to be speculating as to a move happening. But, he did have a great winter. He did score those 4 goals at the winter DAs, which are heavily scouted. He did play for the U20s as a 16-year-old, U.S. U20s as a 16-year-old, which is amazing. And he was so good that Berhalter invited him to senior camp for a day. I got multiple reports from coaches about his blossoming maturity, how he's, instead of being, the best way to paraphrase it is that rather than being a teenager, he's turned into a young man over the last 4 or 5 months. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that he didn't play very much for North Texas, particularly down the stretch, particularly in the playoffs. Maybe that was a little bit of a wake-up call. So we're seeing a blossoming and a maturing of Dante Sealy, and he's a guy who, even when they signed him, I think most of us talked about the idea that it's more than likely he would never even play for FC Dallas, because he's the kind of player with the pedigree and the passport and the ability to go that someone was going to buy him before he ever reached FC Dallas. And it looks like that could be kind of what's happening with PSV, and we'll just have to wait and see. Because right now all we know is that he may be over there and not with FC Dallas.
Yeah, that was 100% a security option to avoid another
yes.
Western
Protect your
McKinney.
investment signing, right? Like Reynolds, like Paxton was, like Jesus was, signed too early, but that wasn't why they were signed, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And, hey, there's the payoff, and maybe that will there'll be some benefit from that if it comes about.
It also could be complete garbage, and for all we know, he's in California. But the no comment makes me think that there must be something happening.
Yeah, FC Dallas. Obviously we see FC Dallas pretty notorious for no comment is an admission of guilt.
Right. I mean, this is us speculating, but for a guy that's attached to PSV to be talking about him incoming to PSV, I mean, that's a pretty strong indication when they call him what was it, an intern, or what was the word they used?
Yeah.
When it translated, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just thought that extra little insight would be helpful for our FC Dallas curious fans.
Yeah.
I still want to know where Peter got that phrase from.
I have no idea. It's a reference to something probably, but I don't know what it's from.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I thought it was like, is that like bi-curious? I don't know. That's another discussion for another podcast, I bet.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking
about. We got to see the new kits. They leaked for pretty much the whole league, and we were pretty close with
close, yeah. Yeah, Dan, you did some mighty fine work on there after we did some investigating and adding up all our clues. You and I put together some concepts and some ideas, and the one that was the closest, it was only the tiniest bit difference from the images that have been leaked. Like one strip of white instead of blue. I liked yours the white better personally, but
I'm glad they did the Advocate the way they did it instead of the way that we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, with just the solid word instead of the double outline that we'd done from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, but it was like flipped from a couple of years ago as well, so it just kind of looked a bit strange.
Yeah.
It's clean. I know a lot of people don't like having an MLM or a pyramid scheme, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I mean,
a few teams around the league do.
Well, only one more year, then you get somebody new.
Yeah. We can have a whole episode just dedicated to talking about how it, won't be American Airlines, although we wish it was, and whatever else. But yeah, I gotta be honest. For the, I think I'm in the minority. I kind of like the 3 stripes. I like the marketing angle they're going for of the stripes that bring us together. The hark back to, what the US were wearing when the league was devised.
Yeah, early 90s. Yeah.
It's repetitive. That kind of sucks, but MLS has an entire team dedicated to having bespoke jerseys, which a lot of teams, unless you're the Arsenals and Real Madrids, the big clubs they have, you probably aren't getting those. FC Dallas, the jersey is kind of ripped off River Plate. I can think of far worse teams to rip a design off of, particularly when the jersey it's from is a white third jersey. They play in white with a red sash. They're never going to play in that jersey.
Yeah, that was a weird one for them. I actually really like I like it because of the return of some sort of hoop-ishness. I mean, it's not the full hoops that I would want,
but it's blue and red hoops, so it's even better.
It's blue and red hoops, which is the better. Which is strange because you did a mock-up with white hoops in red that actually looked really good. It came off of like white shorts, but
I like the blue better than the white. Honestly, I've seen a couple of people say they wanted it as it'd look better if it was white, but obviously when we mocked it up, I think it looked better with blue.
Yeah, the red and blue hoops in general are way better than red and white hoops for sure. I only liked when you had the white shorts and then the white stripes came off of it. I liked that blend, but in general, I agree with you and most everybody else that red and white hoops are not anywhere near as good as the real red and blue hoops. And I'm probably rare on this one. I like the white shorts even with the red and the blue hoop.
Yeah.
Because I like the blue idea of the blue shorts becoming the hoops. That striation, that I get that idea. That looks pretty cool. I just really love the pop that a white short gives when you have a dark top like a red and blue top. Let's face it, that's a dark top. So a dark top with white shorts to me always pops, always looks great. Think about AC Milan red and black stripes with the white shorts, the way that pops. Manchester United red top with white shorts, the way that pops. I mean, I just think, my dream would have been the red and blue hoop top with white shorts and blue socks, because then you would have really gotten the blue payoff. But I think even with the Red Sox, the white shorts or the blue shorts, either one looks fine. I just prefer the white.
So just getting a complete kit nerd for a moment.
Sure.
That new cut they've got, the where it kind of swoops down in like a tailored cut. A lot of players who are playing in those jerseys in national teams do not like the fit. Wow. There's been a couple of times where players have played in replica versions just so they didn't have it. The alternative is they just tuck it in. So, you're likely to see players doing a Ja'Cory Hayes tribute and tucking a jersey in, and then there's less blue anyway. So seeing it with white would probably be less, less out of place.
Isn't it funny now that a player that tucks his shirt in is unusual? I remember when I was a kid, we had to tuck our shirts in. That was like a rule.
Oh, I never did.
Oh, yeah, well, it's the American thing, I guess. It was some sort of safety thing. Theoretically, people's hands get caught up in it or something, I think. I don't remember why I was a kid, but I just remember that being a case.
That sounds stranger danger to me. I wouldn't even get involved with that.
Well, it's like the bracelets and the necklaces you can't wear, or a headband with a knot in it you couldn't wear. It's like, whatever. It's all stupid.
Yeah. Kids. Head in balls and stuff.
Yeah.
But, we get to see a new North Texas SC jersey. Maybe it will be a little more than plain red. Maybe it will.
Well, I don't know any details about whether it's going to be a generated or a template or whatever. But I do know there's a new primary and that they want to line up with FC Dallas. That's why they're getting a new primary so quickly, so that they'll be on the same cycle as the first team. That way you get a little better help from Adidas and some more love from Adidas. I think is part of the plan probably, but. Also, just to sort of sync up in terms of new looks, in terms of primary road. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm hoping that, of course, they get a custom one that's something specifically designed for them. Like a year ago, we had a lot of things we really liked that had involved the slash and stuff. We thought was really good, and Hunt made so much emphasis to the slash, and that's what I'm still hoping for. But even if it is another template, it'll be a new template, probably along the lines with the one that MLS is getting. So
Yeah, one thing I would be interested to see is the training gear we've seen a little bit of for North Texas SC just from when they held the open trial, and it had the giant Captain America logo for Advocare. It'd be great if they do a custom or get on something through the first team that they get the Advocare word mark instead. Cause That kills me, that logo.
Yeah, the toothpaste A is terrible. The word mark is so much better.
Yeah. I mean, I can stomach a pyramid scheme as long as it looks good.
Yeah, right. Looking good is key. Well, overall, I think I'm pretty pleased with the FC Dallas one, which is surprising because I haven't been pleased with the FC Dallas one in about 5 years. Not since they had the little white pinstripe. That was the last one I liked. So I'm really pleased that I like the new one. And if it's going to have different colored shorts, then I really am on board with it rather than solid red.
Yeah, that last the deconstructed Texas flag just it sucked.
Yeah, that one wasn't for me, and even like the red on red hoops without the pinstripe wasn't for me either.
I love that jersey. That was great.
I mean, in person it looks nice, but from the top of the stands, you just look like you're Liverpool, and it's like that's just not Liverpool. Stop trying to be Liverpool. It's like, or if you prefer, if you have that red shirt with red shorts and red socks, then you're Toronto.
Sorry, yeah.
Atlanta, or not Atlanta, they have stripes. There's 5 New York Red Bulls. There's 5 teams that are solid red. It's like, come on.
Sorry, yeah, that was different. Sorry, I was getting mixed up. Yeah, the red on red was the first one when they started saying stop using the term hoops, and they were like,
right,
oh no, they're killing the hoops, and they brought the pin hoop back, and
yeah, the pinstripe is good. It's the red on red hoops that wasn't good.
Yeah. No, I actually have that jersey, but yeah, it's definitely not as good. And speaking of North Texas, some news today about North Texas SC, former captain now, heading out on a year loan.
Breck Evans, yes.
Not Breck Shea, the better Breck.
Yeah, I almost said Breck Shea, didn't I? Breck Evans, yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me, does it not to you? I mean, if you dominate USL 1, which is a developmental position for FC Dallas, then you take that player, just like you do in the academy, you move them up to a place that they're challenged. So if there's not space on MLS, if they're not ready for MLS, you still find them a new challenge. So a loan makes perfect sense. I imagine you can think of a couple other guys that a loan makes perfect sense. I imagine a couple are coming. It's Breck Evans for sure. I think it's a great move. Austin builds a good relationship with FC Dallas already, furthering that relationship. It's a great step for Breck. If he does another great season, I imagine FC Dallas will be the answer in 2021. It's straightforward and easy and obvious.
Definitely. It just wouldn't serve him any purpose to have another season in USL 1. He came in, he did the business. That's your growth. And the step-up's important. Obviously, North Texas SC is supposed to be a step between DA and MLS, but, as we saw last year, it's not the step. It's kind of, it just fits in between USL Championship and DA.
Yeah, that's my joke I make, is there's a gap between the USL 1 and MLS that's a USL C in size. There's a lever in there that you can play at. It's a good step up. And let's face it, we've learned that North Texas for FC Dallas, it might as well be a U20 team, right? It might as well be your Academy 19 team, frankly. Those are the only guys that are really challenged. I mean, look, when you send down Thomas Roberts or you send down Brian Reynolds, those guys aren't challenged by that league. It's like the only guys that are challenged by the league are the Academy guys. So it's like, why not move Breck Evans up to a level where he's challenged? It makes perfect sense.
Speaking of defenders who wouldn't be challenged by that, do you think it's time for Callum Montgomery to go on a loan? Do you think he'll get maybe some time with the first team? Is it maybe more important to keep him in Frisco and keep that emphasis on the passing game?
I do think it's time for him to go on a loan, unless Lucci thinks he's in the mix. Like if he's going to get into the 18 and he's actually going to play some for FC Dallas, if he's where Thomas Roberts was last year, where he's going to get 5 starts and 10 games, then I'm okay with him staying in Dallas. But if he's not, then I 100% think it's time to get him some loans higher than, because he's in the same as Breck Evans. He's too good for USL 1. I mean, those two guys dominated that league as center back partners. When one of those guys, well, Evans even more than Montgomery. When Evans was missing, it was worse. But when Montgomery was missing, it took a step back too. So it's, I don't know that I would send him on a season-long loan like Evans will be, because you don't use a right of recall when it's a step back. Like you don't go back to USL 1 from USLC. You just play the year unless it craters and burns or something. But with Montgomery, I would try and find a place maybe early in the season, maybe try and get him 5 games or 10 games and sort of see how it goes. See if you need him, see if you need to bring him back, something like that. You definitely want to get him playing, and I wouldn't mind seeing a higher level than USC. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody that Dallas has got that level of relationship with, where you can say, "Can I give you to him for 5 games or something?" That's problem with not having your own team. But I'd be okay with that, unless, of course, like I say, that Lucci thinks he's right where Thomas Roberts was, which is where you're going to play, 5 starts in the next first 15 games or something. Then I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I guess the problem
I do have
is...
a no loan that is happening. If you want me to throw that in for you,
Absolutely.
yeah, I found out today that Francis Atuahene is going to go on loan again. I don't know about Emma Tuamasi, excuse me, but I know for sure Francis is, which I think is probably pretty indicative that he's not really in the plans anymore. I don't know where he's going, but I did learn that he is going. I think that means he's not in California actually with the team. I didn't get that clarified, but I knew something was up with Francis when I saw him this spring. His mind wasn't right. I could just tell he wasn't his usual vivacious self. He's one of the most gregarious, entertaining, fun kids I've ever seen. Super positive, and he really can play, but he's just had such bad luck with his injuries. I mean, honestly, after 2 seasons, a fresh start for that kid is probably a good idea. A clean slate. Get somewhere where you can get some playing time, get your confidence back.
It's been kind of interesting because, coming in with Emma Tumasi, they were actually, Atuahene was a little bit ahead of him to begin with. But their development's just gone at different rates. There's a pretty significant gap between them at this point.
For sure.
And Tumasi, he didn't play well, but, if I was from near the equator, I probably wouldn't react well to the weather last night. So I mean, you can laugh about it.
Play in Michigan in college, though. Come on now.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you can laugh about it, but cold weather players is a very real thing.
It is.
Same way. When you get European trialists in the summer, I remember there being a Norwegian guy came on trial to FC Dallas a couple of years ago. He never got used to the weather. He had a week to impress, and he had a week where he was sweating his ass off, like dying in the heat. There's, it's kind of the realities of the game, and it's one of those kind of things you don't see unless you're like closer to it, I guess. So I mean, I wouldn't hold out too much against him, but yeah, there was no sign of Atuahene yesterday, so much like there wasn't any sign of Brack Evans.
Right.
And we saw the line drop. So.
Right. I do expect, a couple more loans. I think, without getting into specifics, I think anybody could look at the North Texas SC roster from last season and see some very, very obvious candidates for loans. Nothing is done on anybody that I know of, but I think there's some guys that are very obvious.
You've got to expect a certain league MVP.
Yeah, I mean, if you're MVP, assist leader, young player of the year, I mean, why would you repeat yourself? If you lead the league in scoring, why would you repeat yourself? And those things seem obvious to me without even talking to anybody. It's like you need to do the next thing. And if you want to talk about FC Dallas, for example, if Reggie Cannon is in FC Dallas, what are you going to do with Brian Reynolds and Emma Tuamasi and Eddie Munjoma? It's like, well, if you think Reynolds is your replacement for Cannon going forward, Reynolds needs to be playing. So if Reggie's going to be here, if you think between now and when you sell Reggie, which maybe is the summer, maybe it's sooner, you got to get Reynolds 5 or so starts. Well, if that's not going to happen here, then you got to get him somewhere else. So he's an ideal candidate for me to go. Thomas Roberts, same thing. There's a ton of 8s here. Is he going to play here this first half of this season? I don't know. It's a lot of guys. Maybe if some call-ups are happening, but he could also get called up too. I mean, he's been in the 20s and 18s and stuff. So, maybe there's a loan available for him. It's all a balance with this team and with these right of recalls on the USL loans. Can somebody use them for a short period of time, or a long period of time? It's like, what was Dan Hunt talking about in that thing the other day, the 2,000 minutes rule, where they want to get everybody 2,000 minutes at least. Look, if you're not going to get that with FC Dallas, you got to get it somewhere. So I think there's some other candidates for loans that are in there. Not Johnny Nelson. I think Johnny Nelson's too close. He's too in the mix.
Yes. And he actually played as a right back, right wing back. So you can add him to that growing list of players just stacking up, waiting for time.
Right.
It's crazy because there's so much rides on which Ryan Hollins head we see.
Yes.
This season.
How healthy he can stay.
Yeah. Can he ride the back of what he did last year, or is it kind of going to be another 2017 for him where he kind of like takes a seat on the bench. Oh, obviously, 2017 also involved. Was it 2017 or 2018?
The car problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just that's kind of like the big factor standing over so many people, because FC Dallas is a factory for fullbacks. I mean, even looking at yesterday's thing, I initially said Kevin Bonilla played really well, and he put in a cross for a goal, and I thought it was Kevin Bonilla. It was a guy who had Kevin Bonilla's hair, and then it turned out to be Eric Centeno.
Eric Centeno, yeah.
And
he looks a lot like him from my point of view too. It's easy to mistake.
Oh yeah, I mean, maybe it was the chattering teeth. I just couldn't see past that, or what. But I was like, that's Bonilla. Yeah, it is. And he's a 16-year-old playing with the under-17s, and Bonilla is a big time prospect that we can't ever emphasize enough. And to just step in and play well enough that you say, oh yeah, that's Bonilla. I mean, that's probably a bigger deal than we can make out on here.
Yeah, and don't forget you also have Jonathan Gomez, who's a homegrown caliber kid playing with the 17s, or actually he doesn't play with the 17s anymore, he plays with North Texas, who's a 2003, the same Pepe class. So, they're stacked at outside back in the academy. You can go down to the 15s and 14s too, and there's kids down there at outside back that are just amazing. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Freeing up those loans for North Texas SC gives those sort of guys time in adult football, getting elbowed off the ball, and all the things you have to learn because that college doesn't necessarily teach you.
Yeah, one of the things that FC Dallas particularly does is they take somebody else's best striker, and they bring him to FC Dallas and they make him an outside back. That's where you get these guys.
Well, I mean, you go to a lot of those teams and the best striker is just the best player. It may not be that they're a striker, but
right.
When they're losing 5-1 to FC Dallas, they have to have the player who's capable of scoring the one goal.
Right.
And it's all
and
about.
Then Dallas goes and recruits that kid and brings him over, makes him outside back.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about pro prospects at the end of the day. All those DA titles and Dallas Cups really mean nothing if you don't have your Paxton Pomacals and Reggie Cannons and Brian Reynolds.
Yeah, that is in fact actually all that matters. I mean, look. In the context of the academy, they try and get every kid they can scholarships and development and opportunity. Do they try and win games? Yes. Do they try and win titles? Yes. The only thing that really matters, is creating players for the first team. That's it. Everything else is a byproduct of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And one player that we like to talk about has been for the first team, who his future is kind of up in the air now based on a potential NFL career of all things. Tanner Tessman, you mentioned.
Who?
Tanner Tessman. The grown-ass man.
He is a grown-ass man.
Yeah, certainly is. He got some time last night, and then now he's on the California trip. It was kind of a bit of a turn for the books.
Well, I think between part of it is between the fact that Jesus and Brandon, not to a lesser extent Reggie, but Jesus and Brandon Cervania are with the national team still, and Paxton's got his little stomach, thing going on still a little bit, and Barrios has got his little knee, and Fafa's got his little knee, I think to a certain extent. There's probably we need a good body Tanner come with us. But let's not undersell the fact that this is an extraordinary training opportunity for Tanner Tessman. And they don't take along just anybody. Last year when they went to Tucson, they took Ricardo Pepe, Arturo Rodriguez, and David Rodriguez, right? All three signed in North Texas, one of whom has now become an MLS player. The other two we think are going to be MLS players. So Tanner Tessman is not on this trip to carry handbags. Tanner Tessman's out there is because he can play and because they want him to be a professional player. And Tanner Tessman wants to be a professional player. So it's just a question with Tanner of, can you give him enough money to bypass the offer to play at Clemson, not just soccer, but to play football? There's a basic math equation there of a Clemson education versus playing for a pro contract. There's a definite value there. There's a value to his uncle being his not real uncle, but he calls him Uncle Bo being the head coach of the football team. There's a potential NFL career. Of course, if you're Tanner, you probably feel a lot more likely you're going to be a pro soccer player than you're going to be a pro kicker. You've never kicked, whereas you're a really highly touted, playoff MVP, academy star. They've already got you playing in pro games. You probably feel a lot more strongly that your pro career is going to be in soccer. Your dream is pro career soccer. So it's, they have until June-ish maybe to get him a deal. We'll see. He's obviously highly thought of. So it's just a question of can they get it together, or is the Clemson draw just too much?
And for context, you think of Josh Lambo being drafted by FC Dallas and then going off and kicking in the NFL after doing so at A&M. He signed a 4-year, $15.5 million contract and got a $3.5 million bonus, signing bonus. So that's the kind of thing that FC Dallas has to kind of compete with is, sure, hey, we can't offer that money, but we can fulfill your dream and do this, that, and the other. That in itself is so tough to overcome.
Well, what you have to consider is that, don't forget the context of when Lambo was at A&M. Being an Aggie myself, I remember distinctly that he walked on, and it wasn't until he was not kicking for A&M at the beginning. He wasn't until as a junior. He was a little bit inaccurate, in fact. And then the guy that was the first choice kicker missed, I don't know, I think it was missed a couple extra points, missed a couple of field goals. And people were like, oh my gosh, this kicker stinks. And they're like, okay, give Lambo a shot. And he happened to then get into games. And Josh being Josh, if you know him, you probably don't, you're probably not around long enough. But Josh being Josh, he thrives on the competition, rises to the occasion, and turns out to be a great kicker. But if that other dude hadn't screwed up a couple of kicks, Josh Lambo might not be making $1 million today, So it's not necessarily like Tanner's not like, I've got $1 million offer from the NFL or I can go play for North Texas. It's not like that. You know what I mean? It's like he would have to go to Clemson and beat out whoever they have and prove he can do it. And how many kickers get a pro career out of college every year? One? Maybe two? Probably one. Maybe not even one. Maybe less than that. Those guys kick a long time. So, it's more about, the dream of the NFL kicking career is there, I suppose. Probably not for Tanner, but for people in general. It's more about the idea of kicking for a national championship that might be a lot of fun, and playing for a college national championship might be a lot of fun. Or am I ready to be a pro now? Because, when you talk to people about Tanner, people talk about his lifelong dream is to be a pro soccer player, not be a pro kicker, not to kick for Clemson. So, the bottom line is FC Dallas has to come up with enough money to make it worth his while to stay. That's the bottom line. Whether it's a homegrown deal or whether it's a North Texas deal, if you want him, you got to pay the man enough to stay. That's it.
Yeah, just in a completely unrelated thing. So I searched for Josh Lambo's salary, and Google has that people always ask. The third option was, is Josh Lambo related to Lambeau Field?
Which, is he? I have no idea.
Which I'm pretty sure isn't just an algorithm. That means that somebody has actually searched that.
Yeah,
that's kind of impressive. But
well, he really only quit soccer after he got his jaw broken, and decided that he wasn't getting first team action, and it's like he got to be 19 or whatever it was, I think. And he thought, broken jaw, and I'm not playing. I'm not making that kind of money. I'm just going to go to college, and happened to go to A&M and happened to walk on at A&M. So, not the common pathway to being a kicker.
Yeah, and you sort of mentioned this is FC Dallas kind of given an opportunity to players and everything else. One thing I did notice as well is another player that's committed to go to university, Nikko Herrera.
Yeah.
He plays against Reynolds, does what he does. Nico's a quality player.
Of course.
And then Lucci pulls him aside after the game, and he's really talking him through some stuff, and he's giving him a good amount of time. I was thinking, like, these things are good. It's not like, well, you've probably turned down a contract of some form or another, and now you're going off to university. Let's kind of cast you aside, because there are definitely teams that do stuff like that, and it's a little unfortunate. It's sometimes doesn't pan out well for them when that player turns out to be good, but to see the kind of investment that Lucha Gonzalez has in the guys that have played under him in the academy, and when he was obviously academy director as well as coach, and now as first team manager, it's always really good to see.
Let's not undersell that Justin Shea played too and started that second game.
He was fantastic.
Yeah, for people who don't know, Justin Shea is an under-17 center back. He's in his second year of the 17s. He's in 2003, which is the same class as Pepe and Jonathan Gomez. He's a converted striker to center back. He's been in some national team, like fringe teams, like the U18 team or some of those fringe camps. He's been some of that. But, now he's not a work in progress, but he was, a year ago.
Yeah.
I expected him to be about a year, maybe a year and a half away from getting into the North Texas scene and to start talking about him as a future pro kind of prospect, because that's where he is. That's the mix he's in, is the kind of player that becomes, a testament in a year or two. I expected Nikko to play a lot with North Texas this year. If and when Nikko went to college, then I would expect Shea would have been the next guy in. So it is interesting that Shea has come up earlier than I anticipated. And it did make me wonder if you have 19s that are not looking like they're willing to take the amount of money that North Texas has on the table, maybe you reach down to the next guy in line, the U17, and say, okay, are you interested in this kind of contract? And we'll move you ahead in schedule and play you up quicker than we thought, because he does have a lot of potential. He's an interesting player. So it's a dynamic that we need to watch. We should watch this next 4 months until those kids are ready to go to college and see how many of them play for North Texas or not, versus whether we know or think or guess that they maybe were up for a contract and didn't take it. So, I think Nikko certainly falls into that list. Tessman falls into that list. Bonilla probably falls into that list. Jonathan Gomez falls into that list. And now we can add Justin Shea probably to that list too.
I was
Cesar Garcia is a U19. Javon Moreo was in that list, but now is not. So,
yeah, I will say with Shea, he came into the game against OKC. He was actually the primary outlet for playing out from the goalkeeper to the back line, and looked so comfortable on the ball. You wouldn't think he was an under-17 playing against professionals. Granted, by this point in the game, that's kind of like the fringe players for OKC, but you're still talking reserves for a professional team. Men. Yeah, and that too. Yeah. He didn't look out of place at all. Second game, again, looks the part. Commits a few challenges. Reynolds didn't really cause the defense too much trouble, but yeah, he definitely looked a lot better than when I watched him at the Generation Adidas Cup last year. Yeah. He looked like an under-17 playing at the right level. Now he looks like an under-17 who, should really be dropping the age groups and just playing adult.
Yeah, he's only 16 years old. He won't be 17 until November.
Crazy.
So he's a youngin'. He's got a bright future ahead of him. But like I said, that's ahead of what I expected him to be. I wasn't expecting to see him until later in the year sort of get this kind of look. So it'll be an interesting process to watch with, the 17s to 19s across the board is, where does some of that playing time go if guys are rejecting offers and need, and why wouldn't you play the guy who, I can't think evil of a club for thinking, if I got a guy that wants to sign, why would I give him more minutes than the guy who's rejected me? You know what I mean? Now, granted, bottom line, FC Dallas needs to offer more money to these kids. They need to make it a viable to the college scholarship. There's no question that's true. No question. But it doesn't bother me that much if one kid's willing to take the deal and the other kid's not. Give the playing time to the kid that wants the deal. If that's true, we don't know. We have to watch and see what happens.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's gonna be kind of interesting to see when North Texas SC camp opens up. I think that's in the next 2 weeks, right?
The 10th of February.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how many academy players are there as opposed to trialists. Obviously, we know, some of the guys will be loaned out at that point. Some will be with FC Dallas.
Well, you were talking about a
options.
70%. You're talking about a 70% roster turnover anyway, and they wanted to add more people because you remember there were times last year when the academy playoffs were happening, for example, or the Dallas Cup was happening, and they lost all their academy guys, and the North Texas was on the road, so they didn't have any FC Dallas guys, and Michelle had to play, or they had like one sub. And they can't let that happen this year, so they're going to have more guys than last year, and they cut some guys, and they've blown some guys out, so they're going to need a bunch of bodies for sure. So they've got their work cut out for them to find guys that are good enough because the open trial they had the other day was a complete waste of time apparently, and they've already cut and moved on some guys, so they're going to have to do some digging to find some players of value.
Yeah, I'd heard the same about the trial. I think they have a second one in Dallas coming up. I mean, who knows? It was kind of interesting last night to see Mohamed Cisse there for North Texas.
Rayados, yeah.
He was there. He was there hugging it out with all the academy players from when he was briefly in the academy. Christian Akeke, fake Mo Salah, was playing too. Yeah. Another guy who got a little run with North Texas SC last preseason.
Right.
It'd be interesting to see if they sort of go in for any of the Rayados players again.
Well, Cisse has a visa problem. They tried to get him last year, and they couldn't. He couldn't get a P1 visa. He's on a student visa, apparently.
Yeah.
So, whether he can get that resolved or not, and what the real issue is, I don't know. I'm not involved in any of that kind of stuff. I just know that it was a visa thing that kept him from being signed.
I mean, he could always play for free. That's a tough ask.
I don't know. Can he? I don't know. I suppose he could.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that would work.
Yeah, it relates to earning a living, and the student visa is like a set period of I think it's a 4 or 5 year visa. Like you can get it, quit college the next day, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So those are so tricky. Trust me, this is an immigrant talking.
Yeah, you would know more than me. When I asked like, hey, I thought you guys wanted to sign him. We did. There was a visa problem. That's what So I wouldn't be shocked to see him this spring actually back with FC Dallas. I'm sure they're still trying to work it out.
Oh yeah,
and those kids from Ghana, the Ghanaian kid, Gambian. There's a couple Gambian kids were kicking around too. They may be old enough too to get in the mix now. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the possibility as well. Like it could have been a solvable situation, but would it just cost a fair bit in legal fees? Where you could say, well, we know he's here. We know he's playing with a decent amateur side. Yeah. We can let him stew and grow. And
well, he also he's like 25 already, so that's not ideal either. But
yeah,
and they do have the 3 players on loan coming in. We'll have to see what's up with those guys, see if they're any good.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I don't believe they're here yet because they don't start till the 10th. But
yeah, we would have probably seen them around either with one of the academy teams or as some bodies in FC Dallas practice at this point. Speaking of Rayados, one thing we did get was the second round pairings for the Open Cup.
Right.
The first round doesn't take place until the end of March, but still. So what was it? Rayados playing Denton. The winner
Rayados plays Denton. Yep.
Yeah. The winner of that will play the OKC Energy.
Yes. Again.
Yep. And Fort Worth Vaqueros got a weird one. They play Tulsa Athletic, and if they win that, they go right back to Tulsa and play FC Tulsa.
Yeah, they got a Tulsa doubleheader.
The former Roughnecks.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. That the geographical restriction on the Open Cup kind of makes it not amazing. When they drew the first round, they gave the set of 4 and shared ownership teams can't play, so we knew that Denton and Fort Worth, they'd be stuck. One would get Tulsa Athletic, one would get Rayados. Same way we knew that realistically the Oklahoma teams would be in the mix because Austin and South Texas all gets grouped in together, so they're not an option. The only other option would really be who is it? The Louisiana Crew, whatever they're called now.
Yeah, somebody got the Arkansas team last year too, if you remember. I think that wasn't that maybe even Rayados that played that Arkansas team. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it was like first or second round.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, we've obviously joked about last time about going to the Rayados game. Maybe we'll be following either Denton or North Texas on a cup run this year.
That'd be fun. I'd love to see somebody go on a cup run. It's only a few hours up to Tulsa too. Watching if Fort Worth wins, that'll be fun too.
I don't want that 4-hour drive.
I know. You have a job. I can go.
Yeah, stupid jobs.
If I'm not working that day, I'll probably try and swing it. It'll be fun.
Definitely. So, have you? I guess that kind of wraps up really a lot of what we have. Is there anything else you wanted to cover?
That was everything I had on my list. That was a whole lot of small stuff. It all added up to a pretty long podcast. It's longer than I expected.
Yeah. It's kind of like it's kind of weird in preseason. There's not a lot, but a lot at the same time. We went over the draft picks for quite a while, and
true.
Yeah.
I guess the only other thing to say is that if you like this podcast, if you stuck around this long, you like what we do, patreon.com/third degree, give us $1.
And buy some t-shirts as well.
Buy some t-shirts, get the great new Winged Doors t-shirt.
And I know
seller of all time.
I know I'd mentioned it to you. It kind of tickled me that going up to practice yesterday, the visitor log that all the media have to sign in read me, you, me.
Yep. That's it.
Unfortunately, there have been a couple of cutbacks in media coverage. Arman Kafai, rest in team employment, now interning, not doing Pro Soccer USA. John Arnold not doing the DMN anymore.
Nope.
So all the more reason to donate to the Patreon, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of more news Aldea happening, by no offense to somebody who doesn't know anything about soccer. So, I mean, I feel like, not to toot our own horns, but if you want real in-depth FC Dallas coverage, we're the only people left giving it to you. So, tune in. All right, that's about it, I think, Dan. For the day.
It's been fun. Maybe next week Peter will fix his browser and
bring back the professionalism.
Absolutely, some extra guidance and a professional hosting radio voice. One of those wonderful commodities that few podcasts enjoy, but we do.
That's true. It's definitely not the same without him.
In that case, everyone can send thoughts, prayers, Patreon donations, hardware, software advice, and join us next time on another episode of Third Degree, the podcast.